Krishna is explaining his connection with material nature here. Because right now we are discussing Prakṛti or nature. And his connection with material nature is, he is the father and nature is the mother. Three modes in which nature operates is Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Based on the psychophysical nature that we are born with, we can be categorized either as Sattvic, Rajasic or Tamasic. Even in modern psychology, there is this concept of introversion, extroversion, and then so many others. Categorization of personality. A person who is in Sattva Guna is more receptive to knowledge. A person who is in Rajo Guna is hankering for so many things, is running after so many things. He might attain a lot of things also. But then what happens next? Then those things stop giving you pleasure. Because the nature of all material pleasure is, it has got a beginning, it has got an end. In the sense that there is a law of diminishing marginality. You start looking for pleasure in perverted activity. You start drinking, maybe you start smoking. See, these are tamasic activities. When you don't find pleasure in rajasic activities, you look for tamasic activities. So Rajo Guna, if it has no support in Sattva Guna, it will degrade to Tamo Guna. While on the other hand, if the person is doing very good in his material assets, earning good money, has a luxury car and has got a bungalow also perhaps, but then such a person is also taking care that his Sattva Guna is also maintained, then what will happen is, through the influence of Sattva Guna, such a person will have internal satisfaction, internal pleasure to turn to, because the characteristic of Sattva Guna is inner happiness.
Correct. Pranam Prabhuji. So, chapter 13, we answered the 6 questions raised by Arjun. So, Sri Krishna answered all of them, and he spent a lot of time on the last 2 really, about nature around us and the Puruṣha part of it really. Now, as we get on to the 14th one, deeper into knowledge, we get into the next set of important knowledge pieces, which is really the 3 gunas. Yeah. So over to you on enlightening us on the 3 gunas.
Yes. So generally, Arjuna asks a question and Krishna starts answering. That's the general trend so far. But here Krishna, he sidesteps from that trend and he starts to speak proactively here.
Right, on his own.
On his own. Yes.
Actually, he's done that in the past once also, I remember.
Yeah,
I think it was in the 10th chapter.
Yeah.
Now listen to me, I think he had done that once.
He's got a very sharp memory.
Because it was odd. Even that time it seemed very odd. Yeah.
So here, Param Bhuya Pravakshami Jnananam Jnanamuttamam Yajñātvamanaya Sarve Param Siddhimito Gata. Param Bhuya Pravakshami. I am going to explain to you transcendental knowledge here. Jnananam Jnanam Uttamam. Amongst Jnana, this is Uttama Jnana. The highest Jnana. Jnanam Jnanam Uttamam. Yajñātva Munaya Sarve. Why this Uttama Jnana? Having obtained this Jnana, Yajñātva Munaya Sarve, Param Siddhimito Gata, have attained the supreme perfection. So this is the knowledge Krishna is going to explain. It is a knowledge, if you understand it properly, it can pave the path for liberation from material one.
And how is this knowledge different from, like we saw in the 8th, 9th and 10th, the confidential information? How does information differ from knowledge?
No, even that is knowledge only. But as I said, that knowledge pertains to what is beyond your sense perception. Knowledge from the transcendental realm is being transmitted in those chapters. But in these chapters, the special knowledge that is getting transmitted is, you are given a vision of how things function.
Or clearing the fog around the materiality, I guess.
Absolutely. And unless we clear this fog, there is no question of reaching that knowledge. So that is why this knowledge also becomes very important. So, by becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own, which is transcendental nature. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. So Krishna, he starts speaking. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth And it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the birth of all living beings, O son of Bharata. And then he says, Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtaya sambhavanti yaha tasam brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradapita. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. So Krishna is explaining his connection with material nature here. Because right now we are discussing Prakṛti or nature. And his connection with material nature is, he is the father and nature is the mother. Mother nature. The word mother nature is used so frequently, but nobody bothers to ask the question, who is the father then? Father is God.
I see.
So since he is the father, he knows how nature works. And he speaks about the three gunas in the next verse. Sattvam rajastama iti guna prakriti sambhava nibaddanti mahabaho dehe denam avyayam. Material nature consists of three modes. Goodness, sattva guna, passion, rajoguna, and ignorance, tamoguna. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So when you buy an instrument, the instrument also, it operates in different modes. Manual mode, automatic mode, semi-automatic mode. There are different modes in which machine functions. So Prakriti is also like machine, which is being created by God. And like any other machine, it also operates in different modes. So three modes in which nature operates is Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. You see, even people's natures, this is another way in which you can understand it. People's natures can be sattvic, rajasic or tamasic here. All of us are born with certain psychological aspects, certain physiological aspects. Based on the psychophysical nature that we are born with, we can be categorized either as sattvic, rajasic or tamasic. Like, even in modern psychology, there is this concept of introversion, extroversion, and then so many others, categorization of personality traits. Similarly, from the Gita's perspective, people's personality can be either sattvic, rajasic or tamasic based on their psychophysical makeup.
And in the past, we'd seen some of this also follows from the previous birth to some extent.
Yes, absolutely. Based on our karma, we are born with a certain psychophysical makeup.
Got it.
Correct. So Sattva guna, Rajoguna and Tamoguna, Krishna gives a brief overview of them here. Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat prakashakam anamayam sukha sangena badnati jnana sangena janaga. Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat, Sattva guna is characterized by purity, nirmalatvat, prakashakam anamayam. Sattva guna is characterized by piety. It's characterized by knowledge. A person who is in Sattva guna is more receptive to knowledge, can understand knowledge better. Because Sattva guna, see, this is the definition of Sattva guna here. A person who is in Sattva guna is more receptive to knowledge. The person in Sattva guna is relatively more pure and more inclined towards piety. Is averse to sinful activity, so to speak. So, to give us an understanding of what Sattva guna is all about, you got a picture of it.
Correct.
But then, very interesting, he says, Sukha sangena badnati jnana sangena janaga. See, once you are situated in Sattva guna, because you have no propensity to sin, you are pure, etc. Because of that, your suffering will also be less, because you are not committing sins. Because of sins, there is suffering. And when there is no sin, there is no suffering.
Correct.
And also, you are more receptive to knowledge, and the chances are that you will be more knowledgeable when you are in Sattva guna. But then, when you are situated in Sattva guna, Sukha sangena badnati, that sense of happiness is going to bind you. Jnana sangena Chanaka. And even Jnana can bind you. A person in Sattva Guna might start feeling that the world is after all not a bad place because he's not experiencing much misery or suffering. And the person in Sattva Guna gains a little bit of knowledge and starts feeling that
he knows it all.
He knows it all. So there is no hunger to gain liberation from material bondage. So even Sattva Guna is binding.
Correct.
So right at the get-go, Krishna makes it very clear that the goal of life is not to rise to Sattva Guna.
Alone, really, yeah.
The goal of life is to go beyond Sattva Guna.
And in this, again, sometime in the past we had seen this. Just because you're in Sattva Guna doesn't mean you will remain there. There is a tendency of the mind to keep falling back into the other two.
Have we discussed this before?
Very briefly. I don't remember which episode it was. Very briefly we touched upon it.
Yes. So it's a very,
you have to be careful. You
have to be careful. Yeah. See here, Sattva Guna, it's very interesting here. Sukha Sangyena Badnati Jnana Sangyena Chanaka, it is explained here. The person becomes attached to that sense of happiness in Sattva Guna.
Comfort of arising.
No, attachment is a characteristic of Rajogun.
Correct.
Jnana Sangyena Chanaka. That Jnana gives rise to a sense of pride that I am better than others. And that pride is Tamogun. So, even if a person is situated in Sattva Guna in this world, there is a strong tendency for that Sattva Guna to be mixed with a tinge of Rajogun or Tamogun also. So, Sattva Guna cannot be pure in this world. So, that is why transcendental platform is called Shuddha Sattva.
Shuddha Sattva. Yes.
Absolute Sattva without a tinge of Rajogun or Tamogun. But the Sattva Guna within the material world is subjected to contamination and it can also be binding. So Krishna says. So Krishna makes it very clear that the goal is not to reach Sattva Guna, is to transcend Sattva Guna. And he is cautioning Arjuna here, beware of even Sattva Guna. Nonetheless, having said that, even though Sattva Guna is binding, it is better than the other two. Because Sattva Guna is very conducive for liberation.
See, you're 80% of the way through, not necessarily 100%.
100%. So the covering of fog is very thin. And when the covering of fog is very thin, you're able to perceive the joy of spirituality much more.
Correct.
To the extent the material covering is thick, to that extent we are not able to experience spiritual happiness even though we are confronting it. See, actually, the knowledge of the Gita, the holy names of God, the deity form of God are completely spiritual. To the extent the person is in Sattva Guna, to that extent the person can actually experience the power of these things. The power of the Gita, the power of the holy names of God, the power of the deity form of God. You can experience it to the extent you are in Sattva Guna. Because Sattva Guna, the fog is very thin. So you are more receptive to transcendental experience.
Yeah.
So in order to actually gain liberation from material bondage, it is very necessary to come to Sattva Guna slowly but surely. Because to the extent you come to Sattva Guna, to that extent you actually have experience of spirituality. And to the extent you have experience of spirituality, to that extent you'll actually gain liberation, isn't it?
Correct.
But at the same time, Sattva Guna is not the all in all.
Correct.
Krishna is explaining here in this particular verse. And then he explains the Rajoguna. He gives a brief intro of Rajoguna. Rajo ragatmakam vidhi trishna sanga samudbhavam tannibadnadi haunteya karma sangyena dehinam. Rajo ragatmakam vidhi. Raga is desire. Rajoguna involves a lot of desires. Trishna is hankering. Trishna sanga samudbhavam tannibadnadi kaunte karma sangyena dehina. Somebody who has lot of desires, somebody has lot of hankering. Rajoguna is characterized by endless desires, endless hankering. Nothing is sufficient. You are a millionaire, you want to become a billionaire. You are a billionaire, you want to be a trillionaire. Nowadays it's possible. Elon Musk has made it possible. So, there is no end to desire. And when there is no end to desire, you go on working. You are a workaholic. And this work binds you to this material existence. Because when you continue working to fulfill your desire, you become more and more implicated within the laws of karma. And as long as you continue to implicate yourself, you'll keep taking more and more birth.
Correct.
Where is the question of liberation from material bondage? So this is Rajoguna. You got a mental picture of what Sattva Guna. Sattva Guna is inner contentment, inner satisfaction. Person is peaceful, happy, pure, peaceful. That is Sattva Guna. Rajoguna is action. More, running here, there, everywhere. And then Tamogun. What is Tamogun? Tamasastvajnanajam vidhi mohanam sarvadehinam pramadalasya nidrabhis tannibadnadi bharata. Tamasastvajnanajam vidhi. Ajnana.
That's a very interesting way of defining tamoguna. That lack of knowledge, ignorance, rather than saying, the evil tendencies. All of us normally understand it as tamogun being evil tendencies, or not correct tendencies.
See, ignorance leads to evil. See, when you don't know what is right, what is wrong, then there is a tendency towards evil. When you have knowledge, see, jnana, that's why jnana is very important. Jnana burns the root of desire. So when desire is because we don't know what to desire for. And then we desire the wrong things. And when we desire the wrong things, in due course of time, we end up in tamoguna only. See, in this world, there is a law of diminishing marginal utility.
Yeah.
See, a person might be enjoying the pleasures of this world. But then, all the items of pleasures in this world follow the law of diminishing marginal utilities. And when the pleasure gets exhausted, then the person starts looking for pleasure in things where you are not supposed to look for pleasure. And that's what tamoguna is all about. You're getting my point. See, coming back to the point that you made a few minutes ago, Sattva Guna left on its own degrades to Rajogun. Rajogun left on its own degrades to Tamogun. A person who is in Rajogun is hankering for so many things, is running after so many things. He might attain a lot of things also. Like some time ago we were discussing this. A person comes to Bombay, gets a very good education, comes to Bombay, maybe coming from a middle class background, and then he becomes maybe CEO of a company, CFO of a company, then CEO of a company, and he gets everything that he ever desired since childhood. Maybe as a child he was dreaming about traveling by airplanes one day. As a child he was dreaming about having a luxury car. But when he comes of age, he gets it all. But then what happens next? Then those things stop giving you pleasure. Because the nature of all material pleasure is, it has got a beginning, it has got an end. In the sense that there is a law of diminishing marginal utility. One day you fancy the good car, maybe 1 month. Beyond that, it becomes normal once again.
Correct.
It becomes part of your life. Now, you start looking for pleasure.
The next one.
In perverted activities. You start drinking now. Maybe you start smoking, drinking. See, these are tamasic activities. When you don't find pleasure in rajasic activities, you look for tamasic activities. So, Rajoguna, if it has no support in Sattva Guna, it will degrade to Tamoguna in due course. While on the other hand, if the person is doing very good in his material affairs, earning good money, has a luxury car, and has got a bungalow also perhaps. But then, such a person is also taking care that his Sattva Guna is also maintained. Then what will happen is, through the influence of Sattva Guna, such a person will have internal satisfaction, internal pleasure to turn to. Because the characteristic of Sattva Guna is inner happiness.
Correct.
And so the person lives this world, but he's not really looking for happiness in the things of this world. You get my point here?
Correct.
He's not looking outside, he's looking within. So in that scenario, a person will never degrade to Tamoguna any longer. Person degrades to Tamoguna in desperation. When you are not able to find happiness in the things of this world, then you start wondering, maybe if I drink, maybe I'll find some extra happiness. Maybe if I try out some drugs, I'll find some extra happiness. See, this is a story of the younger generation also. Children who grow up in abundance, when they reach their teens, they tend to get into drug addiction, alcoholism, etc., etc. Why? Because the only pleasure they know of is in the materialistic atmosphere. And by the time they reach their teens, nowadays, in urban Bombay, I see, they got exposure to all kinds of sensual pleasures. And they've exhausted it all. Ub gaye wo sab. They're tired of it. Now they want to have some other experience. Then they naturally will turn towards tamasic pleasures. Correct. While on the other hand, when there is parenting, good parenting means what? Not just helping the child grow materially, which is rajasic way of growth, but also the sattvic way of growth, which is spiritual growth. If the child is also trained to grow spiritually since early childhood, then when they hit their teens, when they find that the external joys and pleasures of this world is losing taste because they are overindulged, rather than looking for pleasures in tamasic places, they'll look for sattvic ones. They'll look inwards. So, integral part of parenting should be to train children in sattva guna. People are worried nowadays how to control the child in adolescence. Simple. Since their early childhood, train them in sattva guna through spiritual activities. Correct. And then they won't go astray when they come of age. So, tamasastu ajnanajam viddhi mohanam sarvadehinam pramadālasya nidrabhis. A person in tamoguna is inertia, laziness is characteristic of tamoguna. And where is the question of liberation from material bondage? So, tamoguna, so to speak, is negativity. Sattva-guna is positivity. You getting my point? Rajoguna is action. So, Krishna, having given this overview, then he goes further describing Sattvam sukhe sanjayati raja karmani bharata jnanam avratyatu tamaha pramade sanjatyatva. O son of Bharata, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness, passion conditions one to fruitive action, and ignorance covering one's knowledge binds one to madness. He is summarizing the previous 3 verses here. Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance, O son of Vrata. Sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and other times ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. So, we are born with a mixture of the 3 gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. But as we go, see, overall a person might be sattvic. So when is a person sattvic? A person is sattvic when such a person is predominantly sattva guna. Now every person in this world will have a mixture of all the 3 gunas. Right? Correct. As much as in psychology, you can't find people who are purely introverted or purely extroverted. It's a utopian concept. Similarly, when it comes to gunas also, everybody is a mixture of these. But depending upon which guna is predominant, they are called sattvic, rajasic or tamasic. Even if a person is situated in sattva guna, such a person needs tamoguna for sleeping at night. See, tamoguna helps you regenerate your body for the next day. When you have a good rest at night, then you are ready for the next day's work. So tamoguna is required. Rajoguna is also required. It has its utility for doing the activities of this world. But the important point of this chapter is, as such, without asking for it, you will have Rajoguna and Tamoguna in you. But unless you proactively cultivate Sattva-guna, that Rajoguna and Tamoguna is going to pull you down. That's the whole point. In the absence of Sattva-guna, a person will, instead of sleeping as much as it is required for your body, how much sleep is required for a...
Oversleep. Probably.
You oversleep.
Correct.
You sleep for 12 hours, 13 hours. Because there is lack of Sattva-guna. Sattva-guna regulates. Sattva-guna regulates Rajoguna and Tamoguna.
I see.
In the absence of Sattva-guna, Tamoguna extends beyond limits. Even Rajoguna extends beyond limits. In the absence of Sattva-guna, a person tends to work more than required. A person becomes a workaholic. And when a person becomes a workaholic, then there is burnout. And what is burnout? Tamoguna.
I see.
Rajoguna, if it is not balanced through Sattva-guna, it will degenerate to Tamoguna. So, Rajoguna, Tamoguna we all have. We have to proactively cultivate Sattva-guna, even from material perspective. It's very important. See, I tell this often. that as we go through life, all of us, we all have our ups and downs. There's hardly anybody in this world who has no downs at all. And there's hardly anyone in this world who has no ups at all. It's undulating. Sometimes ups, sometimes down. Kabhi kushi, kabhi gum. It's part of life. But in the absence of Sattva Guna, what happens is, you are ill-equipped
to face either of them.
To face either of them. So when you are going through the downtime, typically, even someone as powerful as Virat Kohli, it's explained, I've heard this, that Virat Kohli prior to COVID, he was like, no bowler can face him. That kind of level of batsman. But even he had his downtime, isn't it?
Yeah.
Post the 2020, if I'm not wrong. So it's part of life, ups and downs of life. Especially the new generation, because they don't have Sattva Guna in them, they don't know how to handle failure.
Ability to handle failure.
So when you hit a wall, when you come across failure in life, it's very disappointing. And in the face of external disappointment, when you have internal satisfaction to turn to, which arises from Sattva Guna, you can pass through that phase of downtime with ease.
Yeah.
But if you don't have something within to turn to, then what happens is, you are totally dependent upon external factors for your happiness. Or externally, things are not going as per planned.
Correct.
During your downtime.
The Sattva Guna basically helps you to tone down the expectation itself. Right?
Yes. Then what happens?
Or be prepared for either extreme.
Yes.
Better prepared.
One is preparation, another is how to face that situation. In the absence of Sattva Guna, you don't have something positive to turn towards internally also. Then what happens is, you turn towards Tamo Guna. People go into depression. When they come across a roadblock in the modern day world, they go into depression, they become angry, all tamasic tendencies.
Correct.
Because they are ill-equipped to handle that reversal because of absence of Sattva. And in the absence of Sattva, even when they meet with success, that success degrades into arrogance. Arrogance is again tamasic.
Correct.
Sattvic quality is humility. If you have the sattvic quality of humility, in the face of success, rather than becoming arrogant, you'll become humble. So Sattva Guna, from one perspective, as you rightly pointed out, it prepares you to handle success and failure because you are balanced.
Correct.
But actually, even reactively also, you know how to better handle success and failure if you have got Sattva Guna in you.
Correct.
And it is direly lacking in the modern day world, and that's why we see the newer generations, they're becoming more and more tamasic. Either they're more arrogant or they have a tendency towards, nowadays I've heard that even kids, they have mental problems. All mental problems are tamasic. Because there is no Sattva Guna in parenting. But now parents are also realizing little by little. So we see that in our temple also, a lot of parents, they bring children to the temple. See, these things, it helps inculcate because children are very receptive. So even if parents bring children to temple once in a week or so, whatever little times children spend in the temple, they completely absorb that vibration. A temple's atmosphere is ideal to increase your Sattva Guna. As we'll see in future verses, places, times, everything can be segregated as Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic.
Really? Okay. Yeah, sound.
Sound is Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. See, ultimately Prakṛti. Our body is also made of Prakṛti, external world is also made of Prakṛti. So just like our Prakṛti can be Rajasic, Tamasic or Sattvic, similarly external nature can also be Tamasic, Rajasic or Sattvic. And to be more precise, those times during the day, those foods that you consume, those places that increase the Sattva Guna in you, they are Sattvic.
I see.
Those places, those situations, those times, those food that increases the Tamo Guna in you are Tamasic, and so also Rajasic.
Got it.
So if we, through the right choices that we make in life, we choose to decide in such a way, make the right choice to increase the Sattva Guna in us, the Sattva Guna in us will also increase slowly but surely. So we might be born with a mixture of all three gunas, and we might be born with predominantly Rajoguna also. But through right lifestyle choices, we can always increase the Sattva Guna in us. So that's why this science is very powerful. When you know the science of the three gunas, you can make the right choice in your life to increase the Sattva Guna in you and make your material life better. Everything that I spoke about till now is making material life better only.
Yeah.
And you can attain liberation also from material bondage. So this knowledge is very, very important. See, if you think about it overall also, that connection with spirituality, that connection with religion develops Sattva Guna in you. As society is becoming more and more theistic, as society is turning more and more away from God, society is becoming more and more Rajasic, and in due course of time it will become more Tamasic also. See, I would say the Western world has peaked out. They have peaked out. They are very productive at one point of time, but now they are sliding down. Why? As I said, Rajoguna when left on its own, without the support of Sattva Guna, it will come down to Tamoguna in due course of time. Because there is no balancing factor to maintain Rajoguna also. Without support, Rajoguna will slide down to Tamoguna. And if India, following in the footsteps of the West, we continue to let go of spirituality, let go of religion, let go of God, we have no support in Sattva Guna. Right now there is a lot of prosperity.
Correct.
But that prosperity in due course of time will lead to
Tamoguna.
Tamoguna in due course of time. We will also follow in the footsteps of the West only. Right now, India has an edge. Why India has an edge? Because there is Sattva Guna.
There is cultural base.
There is cultural base.
Strong cultural
and that
base.
Cultural base is what brings about Sattva Guna actually, basically. Vedic culture brings about Sattva Guna in.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily about religion also. It's just about spirituality.
See, this is important point that you brought about here. The distinction here. I'll tell you very clearly. Your father's generation, they had a proper understanding of why that culture has to be followed. The Vedic culture has to be followed. That Vedic culture inherently increases the Sattva Guna in you.
Correct.
And they knew the connection between spirituality and Sattva Guna. God and Sattva Guna. And how connection with God increases the Sattva Guna in you. They had that very clear understanding. But then, your generation or my generation for that matter, we lost touch of why. Why we are following the culture. All we are left with is the culture. But that culture was so powerful, the Sattva Guna that arises from that culture is so powerful that it helped in the prosperity of our generation, even materially speaking.
Correct.
But because we don't know the knowledge behind that culture.
So we discussed this also in the past, if you remember.
Yeah.
Knowledge and ritual.
Yes,
basically.
knowledge and ritual. Along the same lines here. Because the future generations, they have no understanding of
The knowledge.
Of how the connection between religion and culture increases the Sattva Guna in us. They have lost touch with culture, they have lost touch with religion also, and they are in thin air. And that Rajoguna in due course of time is going to degrade to Tamoguna once again. So the point here is, we have to hold on to the culture, Vedic culture, which gives rise to Sattva Guna, and we will be able to hold on to this Vedic culture to the extent we understand the philosophy behind it. To that extent, we will be able to appreciate this Sattva Guna. It can be preserved for the future generations also.
Correct.
So this is what Krishna is explaining here. Maybe we'll stop here.
Yes, I think we'll take it on the next one. Hari.
Next.
Okay. Thank you.
Hare.
Okay. Thank you.
Chapter 14 of the Bhagavad Gita enlightens us on the Guṇa-traya-vibhāga yoga, that is, the yoga of the division of the three modes of material nature. Lord Krishna explains, the nature of Sattva, that is goodness, Rajas, that is passion, and Tamas, that is ignorance. How these gunas bind the soul to material existence, and finally, the characteristics of one who transcends the three modes and attains devotion, that is bhakti. These three gunas are the fundamental forces that bind the immortal soul to the material body. We learn that all embodied beings arise from the union of Prakṛti, that is material nature, and Puruṣha, that is the conscious soul. And Krishna is the ultimate source of both. Each of the gunas binds us differently. Sattva binds us through knowledge, clarity, and happiness. Rajas binds us through desire, attachment, and restless action. And Tamas binds us through ignorance, inertia, and delusion. We also understand how the gunas compete for dominance and the observable signs when Sattva prevails, there is illumination, wisdom, and inner joy. We learn that even Sattva, though pure, is still a binding force if one remains attached to happiness or knowledge instead of devotion. The core learning for us is that the soul is pure and free, yet appears bound due to identification with the prevalent gunas. And bhakti, that is devotional service, is the only sure means to transcend all three gunas completely.